Hi there. My name is Moiya McTier, and I'm an astrophysicist and folklorist living in New York City. I'm also the host of a show called ExoLore, which comes from two of my greatest passions. Exo, from the word exoplanet, which means planets outside of our solar system, and lore, from folklore. ExoLore has been a labor of love for me. To me, it's the idea that space and the physical characteristics of our planet and the way that it interacts with the rest of the solar system influence culture here on Earth. And culture can be anything from the way we dress, the words we use, the types of buildings we live in, anything that we do or say or believe, that's culture. So I usually do this show live, but because of coronavirus, I've decided to transition the show to an online format where I interview guests over Zoom, and those guests are experts in various topics. And together we imagine what the life and culture would be like on an alien planet. Every show, we talk about a different alien planet that is in some key way different from Earth, and we use our imagination and our expert knowledge to figure out what the aliens there would be like. In today's show, I am talking to an American studies scholar who studies migration in the Americas in the last 50 years. I talked to an epigeneticist, and I talked to a science writer who is really passionate about food in apocalyptic times. They're really cool, they're really smart, and I think we should just get started with the discussion.
Thank you, everyone, for being on the first ever virtual ExoLore. Uh, is, this is typically a live show, but because of coronavirus, we are not gathering in spaces like Caveat or other performance venues. So Zoom has become our de facto performance venue. But ExoLore is a show about fictional world building, facts-based fictional world building. And so I have gathered a team of experts in various fields. That's you all. And together we're going to imagine life on an alien planet. So first, I'd like to have you all introduce yourselves. And Catherine is at the top of my screen. So Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Katherine. I am a epigeneticist and behavioral ecologist. I study how our environments can be inherited by our descendants by mechanisms that aren't our DNA. And I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you. As soon as I met you, I need to have Catherine on an ExoLore show. So thanks for being here. Lee, how about you next?
Hi, I'm Lee. My full name is Leandra, but you can call me Lee, all of y'all. I am a doctoral fellow at New York University, where I'm in American Studies, which is an interdisciplinary humanities program. And there I do research on mobility, citizenship, and how people and money have moved throughout the world in like the past 50 years, more or less, to speak in the most broadest way possible about my research.
Cool. Yasmin, what about you?
Hi, I'm Yasmin Tayag. I am the senior editor at OneZero, which is a science and tech publication run by Medium. I classify myself as a science journalist and a former scientist. I used to study genetics at NYU, was better at talking about science than doing it. And now I focus mostly on any science having to do with the future. And my particular favorite topic is food. What we're gonna do when we can't grow food. It's bad. But we're figuring it out.
Awesome. I have a specific planet in mind. So I'm gonna describe the planet. Our job here is to, like, after I describe the planet and what the physical environment is like, our job is to use our knowledge and our imagination together to imagine what the life and culture on that planet might be. And anything we say goes. So don't worry about being wrong. Don't worry about saying something dumb. Everything we say is what this planet is like because we're using our minds, right? Yeah. So this planet is exactly like Earth, except for one key difference. And the difference is that it's just half the size of Earth. So it orbits a sun just like ours. It's made of the same stuff. It has a moon. All of that is the same, but it's half the size. And it turns out when you do that, as long as you keep the density the same, because it's made of the same stuff, the mass is also about half of an Earth's mass. And when you take that mass and that radius together and you figure out what the acceleration due to gravity, it's twice as much as it is here on Earth. So just like if you go to another planet that's more massive, you would feel heavier because gravity is pulling down on you more. On this planet, gravity pulls you down twice as much as it does here on Earth. And then the other thing about the planet being small is that the land masses are closer together. So here we have all these giant oceans that separate massive continents. The oceans aren't as big, and so the continents are much closer together. It's easier for people to get around. So yeah, that's what we're working with. Does anyone have any initial reactions to this planet? Any thoughts?
What does that mean for cardiovascular activity? Like what does that mean for someone who's like, for a bird that's flying or someone who's running? Like, would the physical body perhaps have modifications to take in more oxygen? Like evolution created better ways to absorb oxygen. I don't know if that's what we've done, but yeah. And what would gravity do to that too? Like, does that make it harder to breathe?
The life forms that we're talking about evolved on this planet. So it's not like we're taking humans and asking how humans would have to adapt to these environments. Cool. Catherine, do you have any questions or reactions?
Well, right now I'm trying to do in my head, not really math, but sort of comparisons between, right? So if it's heavier, if we're all heavier there, then what's flight going to look like? Are we going to see more animals that are more like insects? Really, really small, but are able to structurally like make wings that are enormous, but wouldn't work on the size of something the size of an elephant. I suspect we'll see fewer like megafauna, probably not elephants, because if they're twice as big, they would break themselves.
Ooh.
But living in oceans might attenuate that, so we might have like marine megafauna because the water will still, hold them up. Just
more dugongs.
Yeah. What's that?
More dugongs. Sea cows.
Sea cows. Cool. Let's think about that civilization. What would life forms look like? And they can be as humanoid or as not humanoid as we want them to be, because we are making this up. Water to me seems like such a foreign environment. So let's think a bit about what characteristics a life form would have to kind of become dominant underwater. Catherine?
I have a question that's a little bit disruptive, so we can skip if we want to. But I'm curious, when we're talking about dominance, what that actually means. Like, are we talking about a species that is doing what humans are doing right now, which is engineering our environment to the point of everyone? Or are we talking about the primary caretakers and managers that allows everything else to thrive? Because depending on which, or like where in that spectrum we answer this, I think that might determine what our answer to the water question is. Because I don't know if you've ever seen that Doctor Who episode with the nanobots and the gas mask.
Yeah, I was thinking this species is extractive as fuck.
Yeah.
The water people?
Well, just like the planet, it's so hard for me to think outside of capitalism and resource extraction specifically. So I think I was thinking about all of them as producers and consumers and not as caretakers. And so that it was really thought-provoking.
Yeah, that was definitely where I was coming from.
Maybe we could have one species as one.
Yeah.
And the others just trying to clean up the mess. In my mind, because there's so much more water, to become dominant in the water, which is also heavier, harder to get through than here on Earth, these species would have to be pretty powerful physically. Probably would have a ton of resources down there. Maybe better adapted to living off sea life. I don't know. I think the water species are far more powerful, and so we have to decide: are they using their power to take care of their planet, or to truly dominate?
Not to be that person, but when we talk about power, I wonder if are we thinking about like we can smash you so we're powerful, or are we thinking about like the biomass of krill or cyanobacteria in the ocean?
Well, that would depend on what we decide they look like.
I can stop messing with the syntax that we're
No, I
No,
think
okay.
this is actually great. Both of the beings, the land beings and the water beings, are powerful, but each in an inverse way. So like the sea people are like, we will destroy you power, and the land people are the like the krill or the plankton or I was thinking like maybe it's plants. Maybe they actually like, rather than a humanoid, it's like a plantoid or a phyto, like plants are already saving our earth, and so they would be working to save that one. And I think about like, I'm going to summarize this really poorly, but there is a strain of theory. Is it Walter Benjamin? I'd have to look it up and tell y'all later. But they are like scholars of English and comparative literature who are using the fact that like mushrooms communicate. So trees talk to each other and mushrooms talk to each other, and they like have these like clusters, and they act in like polity-like ways. And there's a couple English and comparative literature scholars who use that for critical analysis. Anyways, I'm thinking, what if they're mushrooms? Mushrooms are resilient as shit. And like it's like some balance between fungi, lichen are so, that would be awesome.
It would definitely resolve the problem of having limited land to grow food if they can just live off the sun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. All right, so we have mushroom people on the land who are trying to tend for the land, take care of it, and we have these large creatures underwater. Lee, you look like you had something to say.
Well, they could be like lionfish. Like I think they should be an invasive species. Like like they were probably adapted to one part of this new oceanscape, but then took over all of the oceanscape.
Ooh, and their own conflict within their species is running out of resources. There's just too many of them.
But there are resources on land, right? But they can't go up there. That's like, they can't breathe.
I guess they may have to form some relationships with the fungus people. Who, actually, we should point this out, because if they're fungus people and not plant people, then they require dying, like necrotic tissue to grow.
Yeah.
There's some room here for some sinister dealings. Give us your dead, we'll drag them onto land. We kind of need them.
Oh gosh.
I think they have to interact, is what I'm saying, in some way.
Yeah.
That makes it better. Katherine, you look like you're deep in thought.
Well, I have 2.5 thoughts. And the first one is if we have some sort of photosynthetic organism, then we definitely need to have the other one probably consume oxygen, produce carbon dioxide, or they will produce themselves. And the other one is, what if this or ocean or water, I don't know whether we're restricting them to salt or fresh water. What if it's not that they can't come out, it's just that they can't come out for long because their bodies will collapse like orcas on a beach, or their skin will dry out like
All right, so we've established that there are these two major life forms on the planet. We've talked about what their environments look like. I would like to get deeper into kind of like the culture of each of these groups. And because we've established that there are two, we'll have to talk about them separately. So I'm really digging these mushroom people, so let's talk about them first. In a society, there are certain traits, whether they're physical or emotional or whatever, that are valued highly over others. And those traits are often maybe not dictated by, but somehow like interact with the environment. So I'm wondering, what types of traits do you think the mushroom people would really value in their society?
As mushrooms are fruiting bodies of like a large network of, I think the word is hyphae, underground, right? Probably their culture is going to value collectivism in some way, right? Like you can't be an individual fruiting body mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Probably some level of sacrifice, which is related to the collectivism. If your society needs your dead body to thrive and continue to grow, you must be willing to give that up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think they'd also like appreciate building like staying in one place, right? So it's like growth and change happen, but not through like great distances traveled and not through like great achievements produced. It's actually like the value is in like what you do at a significantly smaller scale. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Talking about time, not space, then, as being
exactly. Oh, thank you. That is, I'm going to pretend like that's exactly what I was saying instead of nonsense.
Yeah, which brings us to another like closely related point. How would their society be structured? Is there a hierarchy? Is there a type of class system? Is there one group of people or one type of fungus person who kind of has more, maybe not power, but like more clout than everyone else?
I feel like just based on what we know about fungus, like clusters of a fungus, there's no leader. Maybe we've got a socialist fungus society.
That's dope.
Not the worst. Yeah, it's awesome. I want to live there.
So what roles are common in this society? Like what jobs, what positions are there? What has to be done for the society to function?
I think some degree of defense is probably necessary in the society, especially for those unlucky colonies that happen to be near the shore and close to those dreaded water species, whatever they are.
Yeah,
so I guess we have to think about like what kind of defense would they have to mount against these enemies?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not always a conflict-oriented relationship. Maybe, as we said earlier, there's some degree of trade necessary.
What if we said that there's some sort of toxin used as defense? We know a lot of.
I like that.
Dangerous to eat. They're like proverbially dangerous to eat in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
And we could, depending on whether we decide that there's more of an opponent or adversarial relationship between the sea beasts and the mushroom people, we could say like maybe the mushrooms can decide like as a collective where to concentrate the toxin to, maybe protect the younger fruiting bodies, or maybe protect the ones that are producing spores, or maybe protect the ones that have like better access to the nutrition that they need to grow. Or maybe they want to keep from being eaten completely, and so they send all of it through their various trade routes to the shores.
I think it's interesting that there are some some members of the society that are inherently poisonous, like if you eat them, you will get sick. But there are also others that can send out spores. Those are two potentially like useful.
And that's brilliant, because air is the other thing. Like if it's like Earth but smaller, there's still going to be wind currents and patterns. And air, I'm told, I'm not a scientist, but I'm told that air is a fluid, right? Or gases are fluids, just like water. So I presume they could use this fluid to travel in the way I was thinking, like water could be a means of travel or mass transit. So what if, like, instead of, that thinking about the airways as mass transit ways is fascinating.
Yeah, maybe safer to travel by air than by sea if there's an adversarial relationship with the sea beasts.
Yeah. So let's start thinking about those sea beasts and asking ourselves the same questions. In this underwater society of sea beasts who, as we've decided before, are kind of destroying their environment and like overpopulating the space and not really caring about what they're like the humans of the sea. What do they value?
Winning.
Growth.
Like being
sure.
the biggest?
I think growing the population, and maybe also maintaining a certain level of size and dominance in the
Kind
sea.
of like goldfish, like how they get really, 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 really big if you let them. But they can't grow indefinitely, obviously, because then they will destroy themselves. But I do imagine a very gluttonous.
Consumption is a big thing.
Yeah.
So are you saying like growing the population as in like they value fertility very highly?
Sure.
Okay.
They're rude and they're sexy.
Yeah, they're just hedonists.
What if the reason they want to be really fertile is to be able to control more space? Like they have like their family is like trying to dominate a space, and so the more space you can dominate and maybe defend or protect or take, then the more resources you'll have, since this animal is not able to, essentially like grow within its size. It gets too big. Yeah. So then if we follow that, then maybe that can inform their relationship with the land creatures, because the ones who maybe don't have as big of families or lost a conflict are pushed maybe to the edges of the water, and so they are forced to try to get what they can from the land.
Yeah, that also
maybe because the mushroom people have a defense. One of their lines of defense is to put their most poisonous individuals at the borders. I guess it follows that at least some of these sea beasts are trying to eat them, or will try, maybe in dire straits. Maybe that's where our disenfranchised sea beasts come in.
Yeah. Catherine, what you said made me think about how that determines what their family unit is like. If they really value fertility and they're trying to create as many offspring as possible so they can defend and control a very large space, that also means that like the children, the offspring that they have, they're comfortable with sending them out to be soldiers, like on the front lines, risking their lives to protect this space, which like says something about how the family relationships are built.
Is it though? I mean, could they be putting, like, could the offspring be the donut hole and the older ones are the border?
But even if it's the older ones, it still says that, like, it still says something about family.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe it is, if it is the older people who go to the outside, then it's a very protective type of family, where old people, like older, the elders aren't maybe they're respected for their ability to protect the community, but not for like their wisdom, because they're not trying to keep them around.
I mean, older, I was thinking more like fighting crime, but it could, right? Like there could be different cultures to family values. Like there might be some families that manage to produce so many offspring. So in ecology, we would call that like R selected, which essentially means you have like way more babies than can survive, and like use them in this case, I guess, as like fodder, which isn't great.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes, it would.
First time.
It might have to, like the reason these individuals are having a lot of offspring might be mandated by the government if it exists. Maybe the reason they have to put reproduction over like family life is because they're sort of forced to do so.
Yeah.
Which honestly might make sense for the society. It sounds like it sucks. Like produce children so we can continue to take over the sea.
I think what's also like, I love this plot. So I do not throw this in to change it, but I think all the things we're talking about is based upon the premise that life is valuable and life must be preserved. And in the society, it like not all societies have the value that life must be preserved. Like that's actually rooted in liberal humanism and the Enlightenment, and we think of it as like a human value and a human right. And I don't want to like don't at me. Like I think human life is super valuable. Like this isn't to say that it's not, but we're presuming that here. And so if our society is based on is one in which that life is not valued, but perhaps what you did with it, right? Like contribution rather than longevity, or I don't know. So I wanted to add that.
What if their culture is just not as pathologizing of death? What if it's because like valuing life isn't necessarily the same thing as hating death. So we could say that, the sea people do value, or the sea beasts do value life, and they also have a really realistic relationship with the fact that death is part of it.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. And that also, like, that's such a double-edged sword, because it frees them from a lot of the guilt and weight that we carry with us in our lives to like do great things before we die. But also it could lead to like people not caring about others that are not in their family unit.
Well, and that could feed into the hedonism, right? Of like, we're all gonna die one day, so today may be a good day to die.
Yeah. So my favorite thing to consider when I'm building a new world and a new group of people is religion. So we've talked about what they value, what traits they value, but what do they worship? The religion can be science too.
And would it be safe to say that religions generally are generated because people need something or want something? Is it in response to that?
It has a whole bunch of different purposes. Sometimes it starts as something to explain the natural world around you. So like you see thunderstorms, you see eclipses, and you come up with stories for how those happen, and those usually involve very powerful beings who become gods that you worship because you want to make sure that natural phenomena don't negatively affect you. Other times it's a comforting thing. For us, for humans in human history, a lot of it has been about fearing death and like wanting to be comforted that your loved ones after they die are experiencing something positive. And so we will create stories about the afterlife to comfort us for that. But maybe if they don't have the same feelings about dying that we do, then that's just not something to consider, or maybe it changes how they would create their myths. So yeah, mythology, religion gets created for different purposes.
I can imagine a situation in which the mushroom people, valuing togetherness and maintaining the collective and staying close with each other, want some sort of way to explain why you shouldn't stray from the group. Don't go near the sea. What's in the sea? Who can say? So perhaps that's what sparks their belief.
Yeah, maybe.
But in what? I don't know yet.
Sometimes you think of religion as like what you worship, but what you worship could be defined as like the antithesis to what you despise or what you fear. If they are trying to stay away from the water, is there something that they say is really good to, is there something that they say is really good to stay near?
Ooh, maybe they believe if they, oh no, please, go for it.
You first.
I was gonna say maybe they believe that if enough of them can congregate at any one time, it like unlocks some collective power, but they have to be together all at the same time at the same place.
Yeah.
It could be collective effervescence.
I love collective effervescence. I love that.
Yeah. It's
Are
my
there any
favorite.
bioluminescent mushrooms? Is that a thing?
There are in this world, but perhaps the glowing is also what makes them, okay, so they are at risk of the sea people doing something negative to them if they get too close to the water, right? Maybe that's how the sea people identify them. Like they don't really know what's going on up there on land, but there's a light. And there's not a lot of light underwater. Like because these people because the sea creatures populate like multiple scales, they're used to not having a lot of light, and there's only like a handful of people who go up towards the light, and then it's like a bright light.
Yeah.
Ooh, are they afraid of it, or are they intrigued by it, or both?
We both.
Well, the animals can only come out of the water for a little while before they have to go back in order to, stay wet or not break or something. Then it would be a lot easier to find a glowing potential food source than it would to find a not glowing potential food source if they do eat the mushrooms.
It's very true.
What if you can either produce the toxin that protects you, or you can produce the glow?
Like you have to choose, or it's defined biologically?
This like collective beautiful experience that's like a really transcendent and wonderful thing that we're working to be able to do. You somehow have like a trade-off where you can't produce as much poison, so it makes you in more danger to do it, but that's part of what makes it so important to do. Also extra transgressive if you get eaten, or part of your family gets eaten while you're trying.
I like that.
Yeah, that has religious practice written all over it. Yes. And it at some point it can become like an honest signal of prosperity. If you are so sure that you aren't going to be eaten, you are going to elect to do this ritual that makes it more likely that you'll be eaten, because you're so sure that it's just not going to happen because you have enough resources and protection.
So like the ones on mountains maybe can like glow on because no big deal. So then does this mean that the conflict between these two groups really comes from like the conflict between marginalized ones of them, right? Like the ones who can't get to the safe spots that are being like taken or occupied by the more dominant members of their species?
It does seem that way. Yeah.
Are you referring to like intra-group conflict or intergroup conflict? So is this the conflict amongst land people and amongst sea people, or between land and sea?
I was thinking of between the two.
Okay.
Yeah, so like the only conflict between the land people and the sea people is between like the marginalized land people and the marginalized sea people. Because
classic.
The higher class land and sea people never have to interact with the other group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. What about technology? We can decide that they're as technologically advanced as we want them to be, and that technology can take any form. But what I'm really trying to get at is like, what type of tools might they develop to make their lives in their various, like in their respective environments easier or more enjoyable?
I would think that the mushroom people will have developed some type of architecture to let them grow vertically, like live in vertical spaces. It's safer, easier to do the light thing.
Yeah, so
maybe another way to stratify their society, who can say?
Or it at least creates another role, right? Now we're talking about a society where architects not only exist, but have a skill set that is really valued and does a good for the community.
And since collaboration is such an important value for them, it actually like it's valuable for someone to go up the scale, because even though you're at less of a risk of being consumed, of experiencing some kind of harm, that means that there's such a much more societal, a significantly higher societal pressure to do things that benefit the whole. If that's producing knowledge that everyone can use to become safer, if that's collecting as much nutrients giving something as possible, like like the people who are closer to the ground and closer to the sea, like because they have less capacity, also have less expectation. And the people who are wealthy we don't know if they have systems of value that ascribe to like money.
So like wealthy is it can be
yeah, the people who are well resourced and shielded from harm by virtue of where they are in the world actually have a greater responsibility to produce more things that will benefit the whole.
Right, because of all those hyphae, right, then the resources from like the fertile coastland or the wetter lowlands can be shipped essentially to those who are safer to use them to produce more light or more ideas or more of whatever the society wants.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a technology that facilitates it.
Yeah, definitely. What about oh, go ahead.
I think we have to think of some form of, I guess, their equivalent of agriculture. Like, how are they going to grow themselves? I know I keep coming back to this idea that they need decaying tissue, but it's true. Perhaps they have some form of mining, getting this out of the forests, getting this out of, I don't know, the grasslands, anywhere away from the sea. But plot twist, the best possible resource they can use to like sprout a whole new colony from spores is a dead giant sea beast body.
Well, there are other creatures too that roam the land. So
perfect.
Yeah, maybe they do have a sort of fighting force, but it's not defensive. It's offensive, and it's to get them food.
Mm-hmm.
Like hunters hunting other beings on the land.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they make really poisonous spore carriers that get eaten by other land animals, and then when those die, the spores.
Ooh.
Yeah.
They sacrifice themselves.
Yeah.
They can be like the
fits.
Very pretty frogs.
What about the sea beasts? What tools or technology would they develop?
I bet they develop something to try to make it so that well, I think two things. Probably they developed technology like in the more central, like, core of the contested space. They probably have a lot of tools for fighting each other. But then the ones on the margins probably have tried to develop like sort of like the opposite of an umbrella, right? Like if the concern is that you might dry out, then do you have a way of carrying water with you to keep you wet so you can go farther?
Ooh.
There are tides on this planet too. I hadn't thought about that, but
Yeah, there are tides.
sorry.
Excavate salt flats to be able to go like up further in to land.
I also wonder if this is a place that's a lot like Earth and it has existed for so many years. The sea creatures probably have access to the oil deposits that exist below the sea level. And I wonder if the oil can act as like in the way that petrochemicals do now, like they can cover their body in a way that tricks their body into thinking that they're wet, but they're not actually, like they're just moisturized, like they just Vaseline up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna mute myself. Hang on.
Okay. On another note, I think it was Lee who just said that the sea creatures are like going up the salt flats, or was it you, Catherine?
I think it was me, but I don't know.
Yeah, going up the salt flats. I feel like it perfectly fits in with the sea beasts, like fuck the environment attitude to like be trying to spread the ocean onto the land artificially.
Yeah, or just trying to expand their land. That's exactly it. A related thought I had is that maybe they've discovered ways to like bore tunnels into like the bedrock and to just like tunnel their way into the bodies of water. Yeah, into the water table, or maybe into like lakes and rivers, and find their way like into the water masses that are sort of enclosed in the land.
Yeah. Another thing that this brings up is that like over time, the like where water is on a planet changes. And so I'm picturing that there is some like isolated sea beasts who were in the ocean, but then like the ocean moved inland and then moved back, but they were left in this kind of like landlocked space. And now there are like divergent evolutionary paths for these sea beasts. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
To see how that works out.
Ooh, how about to add some further conflict? All of these places where they tunnel into and like pop upwards are destabilizing the land on which the mushroom people are building their towers. It's kind of like I'm thinking of the oil wells in like West Texas, where there's so many like kind of pricking up like a pincushion that there are a lot of sinkholes happening now. Yeah, it's scary, but kind of like that.
Yeah. That's terrifying.
These guys sound like jerks.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting is how we sort of assume conflict is necessary.
Maybe it's our assumption, but I don't think it's a terrible assumption given what people have observed, both in humans and animals.
Well, there's a difference between like conflict for resources and like intent to wipe the other one off the planet, right? So like conflict over resources is part of ecology, but attempt to wipe others off the planet is not necessarily part of it.
I have to go. My partner, like, is not well, so I'm going to step away. I think it's going to be okay. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I have just one question left, if the two of you want to.
Yeah, of course. Try to see this through.
What do you think they do for fun?
Ooh. I think the mushroom people definitely do some sort of like extreme air sports, like parasailing, something like that. You know, they're all about letting their spores fly. Why not dive off one of their tall towers and just like see where they end up?
Yeah.
I bet they also do light shows, like maybe towers competitions, right? Like maybe the warmest hottest night of the year, the shortest night of the year. They'll have like, competitions like, can you make like the light strobe up? Can you make it like flash all over? Sort of like community participation fireworks.
Oh, I love that. Maybe they're tied in a little bit with religious festivities.
Yeah. Maybe the big holiday is Midsummer Night, where there's like been a lot of growth and a lot of nutrient acquisition, and then that's the night they celebrate.
I love that. What religion doesn't have some sort of festival of light after all?
Yeah. What about the sea beasts?
I bet they have like really athletic leaping and swimming competitions and games, and they probably have like we're not fighting for this time period, and everybody like compete and party and hang out, and
like the Olympics.
Yeah, basically. But like maybe also there's like more cultural sharing, so like maybe people go on collective hunts, or everybody brings like an ingredient and they all make and share food or something.
I don't think they ever determine what these sea beasts eat, other than the occasional toxic fungus.
We can assume it's like ocean snow or whatever.
Mm. And little did they know that the thing that ties them together is that both species eat trash.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful Romeo and Juliet story in here somewhere. Like they meet reaching for a piece of trash.
Maybe the
Yeah.
one lakes.
I think, yeah, Moiya, you definitely had something there with the evolutionary branch that pops up where water didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Maybe there is room for cooperation here.
I like to think so. Well, I hope you continue to think about this world, especially in a time where I don't know about you, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but like I could definitely use an escape from reality right now. So I'll be thinking about this world, maybe writing a story or creating some type of art to inhabit it.
I know I said it earlier. I just keep imagining the sea beasts as dugongs, but those are so peaceful. So I don't know. Maybe they'd have to be some sort of like jacked up dugong or something that likes to fight. Yeah, I don't know if they're the same as manatees. They look like manatees.
It can be like a combination of different stuff. Like maybe like the body of the dugong. I feel like it should have something that makes it very dexterous, like tentacles.
Love that. That's perfect.
And then like the fangs.
The tusks.
Yeah. Yeah. You do that. You make it up. That's the whole point.
Stay tuned.
Illustrations
will come.
Well, thank you for being a part of this. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Okay.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. One of the things I love most about fictional world building is the way it gives me the opportunity to escape. When I was growing up in rural Pennsylvania, I read so many fantasy books and watched so many sci-fi shows and movies. And one of the reasons I did that was because I wanted to escape rural living as a young Black girl in Pennsylvania. And now, as an adult, I use it to escape work and responsibilities, which, maybe isn't the best thing, but I still do it anyway. Anyway, to get back on track, I think that now, maybe more than ever, we need opportunities to escape reality, because reality is really hard right now. I don't know where you are, but I am in Manhattan. I have been stuck in my tiny one-bedroom New York apartment for almost a whole entire month right now. I was looking at the whiteboard where I'm actually tallying how many days I've been in quarantine. So I'm stuck in this tiny apartment. My world has gotten very small, and I love the idea of being able to use my imagination to artificially expand my world again, even to a world beyond our own atmosphere. So I really hope you enjoyed that. I hope that if you, like me, are feeling kind of clustered in and going a little stir crazy, that you use this discussion that we just had as a kind of starting point for your own mental imaginative journey. Think about the dugong sea beasts and the ways that they interact with the mushroom people. Make some art, write a story, draw a picture, do whatever creative thing you need to do to make yourself feel safe and happy in this time where being safe and happy is hard and one of the best things you can do for yourself. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with another ExoLore episode, but until then, I don't know, stay creative, stay cool. Bye.